We are on the main event, which is going to be 2018's The Meg.
Yes,
Jason Statham.
this is our first summer themed review for the year. We want to try to do like two or three of these maybe. I think our next one might be Ibrahar the Deep, but we figured with Shark Week coming up and the release of the second movie for the Meg coming out, The Trench, in August, the first weekend. This is the perfect time to be reviewing this movie. I mean, this was one of the last movies that we saw prior to COVID when all the movie theaters were kind of like locked down. And we had a blast watching it. And I can't believe that I believe it was 2019 this was? Was it
2018.
2018? Okay, so it wasn't what we had a couple movies after, but this
Yeah.
is one of the last non-Marvel movies we saw in the theaters.
Yeah.
And it's already been 5 years, but it was such a fun movie. I just had just as much fun watching it this time
I
as I
I
did the first time
forgot.
in theaters.
I always remember this movie as being better than I thought it was going to be, and it didn't, underdeliver on that promise again. And I went into it knowing that it was a good movie, and I was like, I forgot how good this was.
Yeah, it really was. And the just the amount of Jaws references that they cram into this movie is just insane. If you just Google the Meg movie trivia, there's just like an endless list of like Jaws nods and nods to the Jaws writer. Uh, it's it's really paid good paid a lot of respect to Jaws, and I honestly think this is reaching here, but I think this is one of the best shark movies since Jaws. I know a
I
lot
don't
of
even
people
think
like
that's a reach. There's not that many good shark movies.
yeah, I know a lot of people like Deep Blue, and a bunch of other. I tried looking at the list. I'm like, none of these have been that great. Like Shark Night was on there. I'm like, I saw that in theaters. I didn't. It was more of a horror-ish movie. It was like Saw meets Jaws, honestly, to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, this absolutely killed it. Like it's sort of like this movie, sort of like the case of Jurassic Park. Everybody's scared to make a dinosaur movie because they don't think you could ever match Jurassic Park. Not everybody's scared to make a shark movie. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But all these shark movies have never met Jaws. But this one, I I give it a lot of credit. It's a really damn good movie.
Yeah, and I watched the special. I actually watched it last night, and I watched the special features on the Blu-ray. Uh, they really tried to make. They were like, okay, we know we can't make the science 100%. It's just not possible. But they're like, we want to make it as believable as possible. And they were like, we don't know a lot about Megalodon, so they kind of dreamt up like, okay, well, we know it's gonna be coming from like a deep sea, so what would a shark living in that depth look like? And they were very stringent on, we do not want this to look like a great white shark, because everybody's seen the same great white shark in every single movie since Jaws came out.
Yes.
And one of the other tropes that they wanted to break was we're gonna save the monster for the end thing. They're like, we make you wait, but not that long. Like, we
No.
want you to see it.
Yeah.
So I feel like they
What?
really.
Yeah. So like one of the things, like you said, they didn't want it to look like a great white was in the book. Apparently, it was like an albino shark almost. But in the early production models that they were making for this, the CG did not look good and it didn't show up well on camera. So they were like, we can't do it white. They're like, so we're gonna make it sort of like a look. It
It was
looked
like a
close.
tannish
It looked
sand.
closer. Yeah, they wanted to make it look like an ancient, like dirty shark kind of is what they went with.
Yeah.
They couldn't do albino, um, so they went with it. It's close to a great white, but not.
Yeah, there's extra gills. It's clearly
Yes.
not a great white.
Yeah, and then they said to make it anatomically correct, it looked too thin when they made that model, they said it kind of almost looked like an eel because it was so thin and long that they didn't want it. They wanted it to look like a shark, not an eel. So they made it look. They beefed it up. They made them chunky, and this is what we got. And I'm fine with it. I think it looks awesome.
You
Now
know,
the biology nerds might be angry about it, but it's a sci-fi movie. Let's have some fun, people.
yeah, it's a sci-fi movie. Um, are we gonna go into the plot on this, or are we gonna address the elephant in the room with like the first 30 minutes of this plot?
No, you can go for it. Yeah, you can go for the first 30 minutes of it. Go ahead.
I mean, so the submarine goes down. They're doing a science. Well, okay, so it starts off with Jonas, who's our main character, Jason Statham. One of the big parts of this movie is they did not want him to be an action hero. The director specifically said, "I do not want an action hero. I want him to be like there's an action movie with Jason Statham in it, but he's not fighting anybody. He's got internal trauma that he's dealing with, and he wanted him to kind of like that be the main conflict, and then later on it's going to be the Meg. So he's down at a depth. There's a nuclear submarine that's gotten into an accident. We don't know what happened, and Jason Statham's carrying this guy, and he's got two other friends that's trying to do a rescue. And as he's carrying this guy, fireman carry, you just sees like a bite mark, kind of like a bite mark dent into the submarine, like something's out there attacking
Yes.
it.
Yeah, the submarine starts to get banged up, and then he sees the bite mark appear. Then he climbs up into his little rescue sub, like a little shuttle almost.
Yeah,
He loads up the guy. There's already a couple of injured in there, but his two buddies are still down there. But this submarine is flooding.
and they're
It's
trapped.
gaining water. They're trapped. There's no way out of it. It's about to explode.
Yeah, he says we're. I think it's beginning to depressurize.
Yes.
And the second he heard that, he closes the gate, locks it up, disengages from the sub, and starts driving away. Doctor, which we don't know at the time, but is Dr. Heller. We get introduced to him later on in the movie. Is like, "What are you doing, you coward?" And he's like, "I'm making the decision that nobody else is going to make." He's like, "If we stayed, everybody on this boat's dying. Everyone on the sub's dying." So jump ahead 5 years, and we get Rainn Wilson,
Dwight.
Dwight from The Office.
It's funny because I wrote him in the notes as Dwight, but his real name is
I don't even remember what his character
Morris.
name is.
It's Morris.
Oh yeah, Morris.
But I wrote him in as Dwight because I think he's forever going to be known as Dwight because of The Office.
Yeah, I mean he's so synonymous with it. But he basically plays like the billionaire, like I'm here to make money. I'm funding this cool project, but at the end of the day, I really don't care about anybody here.
Yeah.
There's actually a really funny scene that happens later on in the movie to kind of juxtapose to that.
Yeah.
But they do. He's learning about the mission that he's paid $1.5 billion for.
And basically they're like it's almost like this science lab to the naked eye when he arrives to the science lab. It's in the middle of the ocean. It looks almost like an oil rig too. Like
yeah, they didn't want anybody to know what they were up to.
Yeah,
because he wanted the discovery to be all his.
Yes,
and he wanted the clout.
Yeah, and just one of the things that I want to add about his arrival to the science lab after that whole crazy intro with the submarine getting attacked is this whole like it's a little like I don't know a 1 minute montage with the intro credits of this helicopter flying through, but there's like so many like cool shots throughout this montage of like this helicopter flying by. There's like a couple of different structures that look like a shark dorsal fin. Like I don't know if this building's really in China, but there's a building that looks like a shark dorsal fin. They fly by a like little island sticking out of the ocean, like one of those like rock formations. It's not quite like really an island, but it's shaped like a dorsal fin. They fly by all these like shark shaped objects while on the way to this oil rig. So it's cool little nod to it being a shark movie throughout. But yeah, he arrives at this science lab that's like an oil rig, and it just looks like an oil rig, and he greets the doctor, and the doctor goes to shake his hand, and he hugs him. He's like, "Nah, give me a hug." And the mother is like, the mother is the daughter of the doctor, Su Yin, also greets him, and then he tries to say something in, I'm not sure exactly what dialect, if it's Mandarin or Cantonese, but it's basically something like about a cat, or he said.
Something so I forget. It was really weird, and then he
It was
goes,
just
he's like, "You have a
nonsense. Like,
nice skull" or something.
yes, something like that. Yeah. And then she's like, "Did you understand that?" And then he's like, "What did you say?" And then like her daughter, like quick, is like, "She said she likes your hat," or something.
Yeah,
And he's like, "I like her. She's quick and smart." And they get into like the elevator to go down to the actual lab, and it's just like this dirty
dingy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's like, "This is your entrance to a multi-billion-dollar lab." He's like, "I think your entrance to a billion-dollar lab should be grand." And then the lead scientist on it, Su Yin's father, is like, "I agree." And then the doors open, and it's pretty much looks like they're in the Gungan world and stuff.
yeah. It's underwater lab, big glass tubes everywhere, stainless steel floors, everything. It's just like super high tech, fancy looking lab. Um, he goes around, he introduces, get introduced to the crew. We have Jax, who's the designer of everything, the subs, the equipment. We have DJ, who's the rover pilot. We have Lori, and I'm missing the other two submarine crew's name.
The heroes guy and the other guy went by the name of the Wall.
Yes, get introduced to them, and they're all like, mission prepping. And we get explained that they're in the Philippines Trench, which is not as low as the Marianas Trench, but he believes that there's a layer of gas where we believe the floor is. And if we go just straight below it, there should be a whole other world of life that's been kept away from this layer of gas. It's not able to travel through it.
They call it the thermocline.
Yeah, the thermocline. So, there would be, life above the ocean, then this layer of gas, and then underneath it would be all of this life that's been cut off for millions and millions of years, which should be super diverse and a bunch of new species, and that would be their scientific discovery. They go through the mission, and they're in a submarine, and they go very, very deep, and they go below, like straight below, not really an issue. And then as they're driving, they're deploying all these lights, and you get to see this new underwater world, and there's something on the radar, and they're like, "Oh, it's just like a gas pocket or something." And then she's like, "Does gas do? Oh, it's an avalanche. It's like a landslide." And she's like, "Do landslides turn 90 degrees?" Sub gets kind of thrashed. It's stuck underneath the bottom of the ocean, and they have to go get our hero, Jason Statham, known as Jonas. And right before the screen cuts out, Lori, which we find out later is Jonas's ex-wife, just goes, "Jonas was right," and then it cuts.
Yeah, they had like a little video stream the whole time.
Yeah. So the cool thing about this submersible in this movie, which again, one thing that they were very harping on was like, we wanted this to look, obviously we have to do some things for the movie to make it look aesthetically pleasing, but we want it to look as real as we can. Like this is going to be a real, like, super high-tech submersible. So it's got no windows. It's got hexagon screens everywhere so they can see perfectly on the outside. It's a very small crew. They're all really cramped in there. There's a bunch of computer systems all over the place. And, like, I don't know. You watched this last week. Or no, a week before I did. I watched it yesterday. So you watched it pre-Ocean Gate. I watched it post-Ocean Gate. Just like... watch the sci-fi movie and there was like more real science in it than that thing.
Oh boy.
I was just like, you just can't help yourself watching it, and you're just like, this makes so much more sense. Like, I don't want to harp on it too much, but I'm like watching this with my wife, and I'm just like, I don't remember this being so submarine, pressurizing, plot based.
Yeah.
But like they're like repeatedly talking about submarines and what happens if they depressurize and the
Yes.
dangers, and you have to get these things rated, and
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's like a steady plot line for the first 30 minutes of the movie.
Until we started going into this and you started to begin talking the intro, it hit me. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It was just really like just watching it now. I was just so like, this is very topical.
Unfortunately.
And why does a director of a movie know more than a guy running a company? It's crazy.
They did a lot of research, and like I said earlier, they wanted to be as scientifically accurate with this as they could be, while still having fun. Like I said, even with the Meg
Yeah,
design,
like
at the end of the day, they couldn't do it bio like make a biologically accurate Meg because it just wouldn't look good, and
you'd be complaining. You'd be like,
people would be complaining. Yes,
you're like, we just want to see cool shark,
giant shark.
and he's like,
monster.
oh well, if we're gonna make subs go to 10,000 feet below, 12,000 feet below. Sorry. He's like, obviously it can't have windows, can't have portholes, it's not going to hold.
Yeah.
But what can we do? We can have these cool screens that the viewer can see what's going on, so he doesn't ruin the viewing experience.
Yeah.
But we don't have anyone saying, well, you wouldn't have a giant window, a giant bubble window. We see a giant bubble window, but we know this is supposed to be screens.
Yes.
I think the only thing that has actual bubble windows is the Stingray.
Yeah, the thing above my head here.
Yeah,
which is what this one uses to go down there initially. No, she does.
Yeah, she does use it to go down there, and I felt like that was maybe a bit of a plot point. Like they wanted us to see it to know the vehicle, so this way it'd be used later on in the movie.
Yeah,
because I feel like the way it's used in the end of the movie is probably more what it's supposed to be for.
Yeah,
but I feel like they just needed a plot device to get her down there to start the movie and have the character intros that push along the plot.
Yeah.
Again, they try to stay scientifically accurate, but while also having to have a movie plot to worry about.
Yes.
So if we want to have a tension of there being another person trying to rescue them and them failing, now he's got to save two people.
Yeah.
Like that's, you have to keep it for the plot. So he goes down, he first gets on the ship and he's like, I'm never going down, or all that stuff. And he's like, oh, it's your ex-wife. She's stuck at the bottom. And he just goes straight on there. He gets on the ship, gets introduced to everybody, and everyone's like, this guy's rough.
Yeah, and because the doctor that was there with him on his original submarine rescue has given him a terrible name, even to Su Yen. He's just like, everybody's like, oh, this guy's a jerk. He's
really?
Solved for himself, because this Dr. Heller has just created this whole perception that this guy was a selfish jerk. He left his two best friends behind to die. And so he heads down there. But Su Yen didn't want to wait for him, so she went down in the Stingray above me here. She gets down there. She sees the sub, no problem. But she quickly begins to get attacked by the Meg. And they realize that it's attacking because of the lights. So
yeah, the way they do the reveal for this is really awesome, because at first, I was really confused because, again, I saw this movie 5 years ago, and you see the giant squid and you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
What? And then you're like,
the Meg comes and eats the squid.
Yeah, and then I was just like, oh my god, I remember this. So it was like I'm having the same initial reactions I was the first time I watched this movie, where I was just as sucked in. So I think that's a really good, because this movie could have easily just not aged well and been like, oh, this is a crappy movie.
Yeah,
but it lives up to expectations.
They were even. I was reading one of the little things they're saying that even the squid could have sort of not necessarily been a Jaws reference, but the writer of Jaws also wrote a novel after Jaws called Beast, which was about a giant squid. There even was a 90s made-for-TV movie / miniseries that Shout Factory. I discovered, I was like, there's no way this thing has a DVD or a Blu-ray, and Shout Factory actually produced a extended edition DVD, and it's like only $8. I think I have it in my cart right now, honestly. But I remember watching it in the '90s on TV, and made by the same dude that wrote Jaws. So they're saying that the squid could have actually been another Jaws-ish nod. They said a lot of these things in this movie were nods to his work. But yeah, the Meg eats a squid, and everyone's kind of like in shock. They're like, "Oh my god, it's a Meg!" And Jason Statham tells Suyin to get out of there because the squid was crushing the Stingray sub. That it was getting compromised. It wasn't going to last down there, and it's not like she could even load it. I don't even know what the logic of her going down in there is.
She had some type of magnetic hook that she was going to shoot.
Oh yeah, she was going to tow it up, but they said that if she towed it up, it would have exploded.
Yeah, well, she because her vehicle was compromised, she didn't have enough time, and she wouldn't be able to carry that. So he's like, "I have the sub.
Yeah,
I'll hook up. I'll get them out of there."
Yeah, so he hooks up, and it's Lori, the Wall, and Hero, the Hero dude. I forgot what his name was.
I forget. It was something with an O.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it was.
And while they were waiting, he was writing like a letter to his wife. So Lori gets also during the whole process of this, Lori kind of trips in the ship, and she gets stabbed with like a screwdriver or something like that.
Yeah,
because they were trying to get the system back online for the submarine. So he pulls her out first, his ex-wife, and then the Hero dude pushes the Wall, what they call him. He's pushing her through the hatch, and the Meg is coming towards him, and Hero knows that if he doesn't close the hatch behind him, they're all going to die. So he shoves the letter to his wife in the Wall's pocket, shuts the hatch behind him, and releases them, and Jason Statham takes off, and the Meg goes, attacks the sub. Hero releases all the lights, turns on all the lights for the sub so that he can draw the Meg, and they escape through the thermocline. And they get back up, and Suyin confronts Jason Statham, saying, "You left them behind to die." And he's like, "This is why I don't do this stuff." He's like, "It's never about the ones that you save. It's about the ones that get left behind, and you get blamed for it no matter what you do." So they have a bit of a fight. And then they're like, "Listen, he really didn't. It was the Hero dude's call. He did it. There's nothing we could have done. If he stayed there, we all would have died." So she goes, apologizes to him, and Heller's still giving him some crap about that. And they kind of continue talking about what had happened, and they're like, "Oh," Dwight's like, "Oh, this is like a massive discovery." They're like, "What can we do about this? How can we?" He's kind of like, "How can we make money off of this announcement? This is my discovery. How are we going to get back down there?" And
so they're all like, "This isn't a good idea. We gotta wait. Like, somebody just died. Lori's like, almost dead. We have to kind of regroup." And he's like, "Oh, if we wait, everybody's gonna want to jump on this discovery." And then it comes to Mei Li, which is Suyin's daughter, and she's playing with like her little. It's almost like one of those BB-8 toys where it's like a ball that like rolls by itself. It's like a remote control. She had met Jason Statham prior on the sub before he went down to save everybody. But you have this creepy scene where something's happening because it's following her.
Oh, yeah. And then one of the other things that we forgot to mention is when Dwight gets shown around here to the lab when he first arrives, when he gets this big grand entrance there, when we reveal the scientific hallway, there's 2 whales there right in front of him too.
Yeah.
So the whales are usually hanging out in the hallway where she's playing, but
yeah.
So this time they're not.
Yeah. So she goes down there. She's in this big hallway, and she turns around, and the Meg is there, and he just bites the glass, and she screams, and the whole thing jostles, and they run down.
Because the whole station shakes, and they're like, "What was that?"
Yeah.
And I don't even know how they knew she was down there either, because they're like,
they don't explain that.
They're like, "Mei Lin." They're like, "All right, let's get in the elevator." And
yeah,
go all the way down to that
and Jason
level.
Statham just run straight there.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, what's going on?" And like you see the baby whale, and he's like, they're like, oh, where's the mother? And then as soon as they say that, the Meg comes and just eats the baby whale, like in
Yeah.
one bite, just like bites it in half.
Yeah.
And they still don't notice the glass. And then wait, no, they did notice the glass.
noticed
At
the
that point,
glass
they noticed the
first.
glass because they're looking and they're like, look
And
at
then
this.
the baby whale came into frame, and then
Yes.
they're like, yeah.
Yeah, and then then they see the thing and they're like, oh, like the shark's back.
Yeah. It
Uh,
breached.
it
It breached the
breached.
thermocline, and then they're like, oh, this is a mess. Now we
So
got this giant thing. How do we get it contained?
yeah, so basically what they explained was that as they descended, it kind of made a pocket for the sharks to escape through. So
A
that's
temporary heat vent. The whole reason why the Meg couldn't come through the thermocline originally is because it's cold. And one of the theories was that way back in prehistoric times before the Ice Age, the Meg went down and it was warmer water. And then when the Ice Age happened, the thermocline formed, which is how the subworld was created.
yeah,
And it couldn't penetrate this sub-zero temperatures because it was too cold.
yeah.
But this heat vent from the sub breaking through it was enough for it to get through.
Yeah. So like from here, like the plot moves like very quickly.
Yeah, they start getting reports of three ships with like Mayday signs. This is where I kind of found it a little odd, though. So you're on this multi-million-dollar science lab. Clearly, the dude arrived there on a helicopter. You have all these ships out there sending Mayday signals. You know this thing is out there. It took down a submarine. It almost took down two submarines. And how do you go meet those three ships?
In a boat.
Let's get on a boat.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if they had like the resources. It was really weird though because like they go up to the boats, but they don't like.
Well, the boats are destroyed.
Yeah.
They get to where the Mayday signals are, and all you see is just like it looks like almost after a hurricane. You just see like wood floating in the water, bodies floating in the water.
Yeah.
There's even dead sharks without fins. So it turns out that these boats were poachers. They
Yeah.
poach sharks and they cut the fins off the sharks. Um, so it's like kind of like, oh, the shark got its revenge on the poachers by taking out these three ships. And then what happens from there?
So
Do they
the,
go
so the,
in?
so
Oh, it was still there.
so the Meg's there, and then it was like, what are we gonna do? How do we keep a track of it? And Rainn Wilson's just like, we just put a tracker on it. Like, have
And
you
they're
guys
like,
ever
"Oh."
seen Shark Week?
Yes, he goes, oh, have you ever watched Shark Week? He's like, they have trackers on all these things.
So they have to. The thing is though that
They don't want to make noise.
well, they can't get close enough to it by itself. So they're like, somebody has to go out there and swim, and the rifle only has 100-foot range.
So whoever swims out there needs to be within 100 feet. And of course, it's Jason Statham.
It's always Jason Statham.
So he agrees to do it. He sings his Finding Dory, just keep swimming.
Yes. Oh my god, my wife loved that.
Yeah. And he gets to within 100 feet. He nabs the shark perfectly fine. And then it gets... How does he draw the shark's attention? Because after he shoots the shark, then the shark kind of notices him swimming back.
So they start the crank, and it makes
Oh,
noise.
yes.
So
Yes.
he's on a line.
Yeah, he's on like
So- So
like
they start reeling him
winch.
in. Yeah, he's on a winch. So they start reeling him in, and he's like, "Start the boat, start driving," because the shark's just making a beeline for him. So now
Yeah.
the boat's moving away, and he's being towed and reeled in by the boat, and he's like being dragged all over the place. One of the cool things in the making of was that, like, obviously the scene was faked to an extent, but he actually legitimately was on the tow line being pulled through the water.
Yes,
He did his lot of his own. He didn't do
he-
all, but he
he-
did a lot of his own scenes in this movie.
he was a professional swimmer. Actually, he did do a lot of his scenes.
Yeah, they said
there's actually footage. If you search it, you can find footage of him in the early '90s in like competitions and stuff.
Yeah, so he did a lot of the scenes, and they said like basically a lot of the scenes where they had to like hang on, he was actually hanging on because he didn't like to like all the other actors were in like harnesses so they wouldn't fall, but he didn't like the harnesses. Like he'd rather like let go if he was uncomfortable and then just like reshoot the scene.
Yeah,
Or if it was something where he needed assistance, they had some type of quick release on him, so this way he could let himself go if he wanted to.
yeah,
So it's really cool to see that. And they're like, oh, like he was like everyone was doing scenes like 13-hour days in the water, but they were like he was doing like crazy like lengths of times and crazy scenes in the water.
yeah,
And so everyone's like, I'm dead tired. Like I don't even know how this guy is even like operating right now.
yeah.
But yeah,
Badass.
the scene work was really good in this. So anyway, he like just makes it
Yeah, like he's getting
onto the boat.
he like almost like jumps onto the boat because he's getting reeled so fast at this point. I mean, it's a winch. Like you could use it to tow something. So he's just like a 100 and something pound guy getting pulled in at who knows how fast by this thing. So this guy's flying. He's literally like bait on a fishing hook getting reeled in. And he just makes it on the boat and avoids getting eaten like a hairline misses it.
Yeah, so he gets on the boat, they just miss it, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna use a shark cage and poison the shark. They have like this stuff where it's like, oh, like 20 cc's would kill a whale, so they're using like a whole like 500 cc bottle
Like
on
this
the
do
shark.
it.
So they have, I mean, you can see the like the spear thing over here with the poison in it. He's not the one who delivers the poison. It's Su Yin, so I don't know why this picture exists. But that's the spear that they use. Su Yin goes in the shark tank. She said they actually showed that she also was like actually in the shark tank for the scene. It was in a tank. It wasn't in the ocean, but she's like it was like such a long day they spent filming this.
Yeah, it's so this shark cage almost looks like a glass jar. It's all glass around the sides, and the bottom's cage and the top is cage.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to withstand like thousands upon thousands of pounds of pressure. Like it's supposed to be indestructible.
Yeah, and it is indestructible. The only issue is if you still get swallowed whole, it doesn't really help you out that much. So
Yeah.
the mate comes, starts bashing, and the bottom of the cage is brittle, and the top of the cage is brittle, but the sides he can't do anything with. So he's like, I'm just gonna swallow this whole thing whole. And as he's doing this, she like jabs him inside the mouth. She's like basically in his whole mouth, and he's starting to like run and jostle, and he like takes like the whole line, and Jason Statham, just being Jason Statham, just jumps in the water with the scuba tank, and is like climbing down this rope that the cage is on because it's about to get snapped off. He just gets her out in time. They're trying to ascend. Boat's trying to drive away.
Yeah, they're on the rope again, and the Meg's like, it got wrapped up in.
It got caught up in some lines because they had the cage line, and then the crane fell down, so it kind of like got ensnared in the crane.
Yeah, pull the crane off, so the crane's stuck to it, and it's just about to like eat Jason and Su Yin, and then it gets stuck by the crane, and then it just stops.
Yeah.
And then the poison had kicked in, and it dies. So they reel this thing up onto the boat with another crane, I believe, or I don't know.
Yeah, they had another almost like the thing that they would use like when you see like these like party fishing boats, like with a big thing that they'd like hook like a marlin on or something, and like the Meg is on it dead, and like it's like throat's like cut because it wasn't fitting like on the back of the boat, so they had to like make it like fit.
Yeah.
And they're all like joking, having fun. They're like they're taking pictures. The wall's in the water.
Yeah. They lower the crane because he freaks out because while he's taking a picture with his head in the shark's mouth, they lower the crane as a joke and he falls in.
And they're all having a good time. And then Mac, which is the kind of like I'd say he's like the mission boss. He's working hand in hand with the head doctor. he's like, weren't the because he's looking at the teeth and he's like, wasn't the bite marks on the base a lot bigger than this?
Yeah.
And then the second he says that, the real Meg comes out of the water, swallows the wall, which is the character, not an actual wall, and then like eats the Meg that they had on the boat, and it like
Yeah,
covers
just like
up almost the whole boat.
yeah. It's huge. It's massive.
And like I just felt like that was like again like I kind of forgot about that. I was like I knew that there was another Meg, obviously, because like at this point we're an hour into the movie and like
Yeah, and they killed it already.
they can't kill it already. But like I was just like, oh my god! Like, when you see it happen,
Yeah.
it was a really cool reveal.
And
But-
then it flips the boat over.
yeah.
And it pretty much capsizes the boat.
Everybody's rushing onto it.
Yeah,
but
Soo-Yin's father gets hit with a lifeboat. The propeller hits him in the chest.
yeah, and then it's Jackson Heller in the water, and Heller's like, you're a good person, Jackson. So he starts flailing so that he'd distract the Meg, because the Meg was coming towards both of them. She was able to make it back, and Heller sacrifices himself. He did make amends with Judas before his death scene. Jonas, not Judas. So you did get like a full character development for him.
He wasn't that much of an ass anymore, because he's a very hateable character throughout most of this movie until he kind of makes amends and apologizes.
Yeah, at the end, after Jonas saves Soo-Yin, he does apologize. So Mac gets a couple life rafts. They're heading back to the boat, and Rainn Wilson's character, Morris, let's just keep calling him Morris, he's on like his sat phone, and he's like, come over here, like we need you. And so like he's like, the best they can do at such short notice is just a helicopter with a machine gun and another tracker.
Yeah.
So they shoot the tracker on the Meg. They're like distracting with the machine gun because the Meg's still following them. They get back to the base. Unfortunately, on the way to the base, the doctor dies, and it's a really like heartwarming scene. Like, oh, super duper sad, especially when they get back and like the granddaughter's there. And, oh, super duper sad. Really like for a movie like this to have a scene like that was like kind of really like touching.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things like during this with the whole thing with the helicopter, because clearly the machine gun is not enough to. It's more of an annoyance.
Yeah, it's just
to
a
deter the
distract.
shark. One of the things I really thought, because it happens twice. We'll get to the second instance where they have the helicopter. I thought for sure this Meg was going to jump out of the water and take the helicopter.
I'm so happy you said that.
I was like, and then like even watching, I didn't remember. Like I said, it's been since 5 years now since we've seen this movie. I was like, oh, does it happen the second time? And then it doesn't.
It never happens.
It never happens the whole movie, and I'm like, I just really want to see the Meg just breach the water and just like knock this thing out of the sky.
I think it's gonna probably happen in the new movie.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about this new movie after we're done with this review.
Yeah.
Because I have some thoughts, but
yeah.
Yeah. So this is where that funny billionaire who doesn't really care about anybody's scene comes in. They're all on the boat, the crew's all together. They're, everyone's upset. They're crying, and Morris is just like, I came here to celebrate with you guys on a scientific journey, but I'm really here now to just mourn with you. Cut. Goes to scene of him going on a helicopter and saying, "All right, see you guys later."
And he's like, he's like,
before that,
he's like, oh, we've contacted the Philippine, Chinese, and a bunch of different nearby countries, navies to let them know the situation. They're tracking it. It's in their hands now. It's no longer our problem.
Yeah.
Yada yada. And he's like, I'm shutting down this base until this is resolved. That way, you guys have some time to mourn. And we'll resume operation once this is all taken care of. And then it just cuts to him on. He's like, "Oh, there's a lifeboat. There's life ships coming tomorrow to take you guys back to shore." And he's like, "You guys don't need to worry about this anymore. It's no longer our problem."
Yeah.
And
And
then it
then yeah.
cuts to him getting on a helicopter. He's like, "Peace."
Yeah, so he's not mourning with them. He was never a part of them. Like he just
Yes.
does not care about them at all. And then we learn that he just wants to cut liability because if he finds out that he's the person who did this, he's worried about lawsuits. So he's like, "We're gonna blow this thing up."
Yeah, they made like depth charge. He had one of his like guys make depth charges for him with Semtex and basically strapped together to like sink in the water. So they're tracking this thing. He gets down on a boat for some
That was
reason.
another. I did not understand why. Why wasn't he on the helicopter with the bomb guys?
Yes. So he's like, I'm not getting near this thing within 100 meters of this thing until I know it's dead. So they're flying over, they're dropping these depth charges, blowing it up, and then the motion stops. So they roll up with the boat and they get there, they're poking it, and they see sharks eating it. They're like, oh, that's gross, whatever. It's eating some kind. So one of the guys gets out. He's like, oh, go get me a tooth. And the guy gets out, climbs up, and then comes back. He's like, there's no teeth on this thing. And he's like, what do you mean? And the guy's like, I think we blew up a whale. And then the guy's like, get us out of here now. He's like, it's right underneath us. So they hit the gas. He falls out of the back of the boat and he swims up onto the whale while his guys are driving away with their boat. They don't realize he's not in the boat. The Meg shows up and goes and takes a chop out of the whale, misses him, and he thinks he's all good. He's climbing on, and then you see his hands like digging into this whale's corpse, and the Meg comes back for a second bite, and all that's left is his one hand. And that's the end of Dwight. I mean, Morris.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I thought that was a fitting end to him. And that kind of rolls into the last act of this movie, which is they find out that no ship's coming. He didn't call anybody. They're not getting help. They're all stuck on that oil rig together. It's a science facility. So they're like, what do we have to do? We have to stop it all by ourselves. We tried calling everybody. No one believes that there's an ancient shark in the water.
Yeah, and it's heading towards a highly populated beach. It's one of the most populated beaches in the world. So like we got to get there before it does. So they're working on these plans and they're strapping missiles to the Stingray submarines. So and instead they're like, let's just load all our submarines and equipment onto this lifeboat and we're gonna take it to kind of intercept the shark. So they chase after the shark. The plan is Suyin and Jason Statham are gonna go underwater with two stingrays and just blow this thing up with torpedoes. So then we get quite a pretty decently long beach scene for a grand finale here. There's a wedding out on the ocean by this beach. They're doing some wedding photos.
There's a dog named Pippin.
There's a dog named Pippin, which is also a Jaws reference because the dog in Jaws was called Pippet. So it's a little close resemblance. There's a boy on the beach that wants to go in the water and swim, and the mom says, "All right, as long as I can see you."
There's a couple
She's dressed
guys.
very similar to the mother from Jaws of the second victim. Uh, then there's a couple guys hollering at girls on some beach floats, and
And so he goes, "Hey, come over here. We have plenty of room." And that's when the scene starts. So the Meg's fins get caught on all these chains for these like little like kind of like wooden islands that they're on. So he
yes,
starts kind of dragging them all together.
and these there's three of them,
Yeah.
just like the three barrels in Jaws. This is another. This whole sequence is just jam packed with Jaws references. So those three things are supposed to be like the three barrels from Jaws. So stop it from going under. So it's
Oh
dragging
yeah.
these floating platforms. Everyone's going nuts, getting out of the water. There's Zorbs. And
Yeah.
apparently, that whole little guy running the Zorb, he get the guy running in the Zorb on the water gets eaten.
Yes.
And apparently, the popping sound to that Zorb was like something that the director was like obsessed with getting right. They apparently spent a very long time getting that Zorb popping sound perfect.
Oh
um,
man.
yeah, yeah. But it's just complete utter chaos. I mean, you picture the Jaws beach scene, but picture that like times 100. I mean, right off the bat, it's like the shark is times 100, but the crowd. I mean, we're talking thousands of people. I mean, when we get the helicopter panning over it, it's just nuts. Um, the shark really doesn't get a ton of people in this scene. It really gets the Zorb guy and a few others. They don't really show a ton of the casualties in this scene, but then they start. Jonas and his crew start using whale sounds to draw the shark away. So he kind of is done with the beach people, and he's like, "Oh, I want to go get the whale. That's a bigger snack." Swims out to that. Jonas is there, and Suyin's there. Suyin fires off a missile. No, actually, she doesn't get. Does she get the
She
fire? No,
does. She fires.
she fires
He
it off. They see
doesn't.
he doesn't. They see an explosion happens, and over this beach is just like a bunch of news media helicopters just watching because it's like, I guess like spring break kind of, and they're like, "Whoa, did you see that out there? Let's go check that out." So a couple helicopters go out there. They see there's these explosions going on, and they're kind of not paying attention to where they're flying. And he's like, "Whoa, you almost hit that guy!" And he dodges it, but then a third helicopter comes in and smacks him, and the helicopter crashes into the ship. So everybody on board the ship, the whole crew, Jax, Mac, Suyin's daughter, they all jump overboard into the water, and they're like, "Oh, Suyin's overboard." So Malin's overboard. So Suyin's like, "All right, I gotta go," and Jason Statham's like, "Yeah, go help her out. I'll take care of this." So Jason Statham's got it all planned out. He's swerving through, getting chased by the Meg through reefs and everything, and he's about to shoot it, and then his missiles jammed. He can't fire his missiles.
Yeah.
He had this thing dead in his sight, and he couldn't shoot. So his ship gets banged up. It's got like some like shrapnel sticking out. So he's like, "All right." So he starts driving his Stingray and gets underneath the Meg. Right as the Meg's about to chomp on him, he like just jukes him, gets underneath and turns it and like slices him straight down the gut, pretty much gutting the Meg. It starts bleeding out. Uh, the Meg starts to get to Jonas's Stingray in his mouth. Jonas starts loading up his equipment. He's got a knife. I think he did have the spear with him. I don't
No,
remember.
I think it was a piece of his ship.
Oh.
I don't think it was the spear. I don't think it was this spear. Yeah. So he jumps onto the Meg with the knife, kind of like latches on. Then he takes spear, shrapnel, whatever it is, and like plunges it into the Meg's eye. And supposedly, I guess it's implied, goes through and like hits its brain.
Yeah. Like as the Meg, like almost like the Meg breaches the water in this scene.
Yeah, like up in the air, like
Yeah, Jason
20,
Statham's
30,
like, yeah,
80 feet. I don't even know.
yeah,
Like crazy high.
yeah. So the Meg drops into the water and pretty much almost dies immediately from that stabbing.
Yes.
And then it's
Well,
just
dies.
it's also bleeding out everywhere too.
Yes.
Because
He
Jason
got
Statham like
ripped the
gutted
whole
this
way.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably would have died of those wounds either way. And then just swarms and swarms of sharks start coming.
Well,
like we're talking.
yeah, it started kind of like jerking, like it was going to start going again.
Yeah.
And because you're like, oh my god, this thing's not dead.
Yeah.
And then, all these schools of sharks come, and I'm eating tea. You can finish it up.
Yeah, they just begin eating them, and Jason Statham's like in the middle, thousands of sharks, and then he almost gets bit by a hammerhead, and then Soo-Yoon comes back with her sub and sort of lifts him up and knocks the shark out of the way, and they go back on the boat, and Jonas is like, "Oh, I could use a vacation," and then it's like super fast wrapped up, and it goes back. It starts playing like grim music, like cuts back into the water, like making you feel like, oh, they're gonna show another Meg now, and then just the words Finn come up, and then that's it. There's no after credits or anything. That's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's a fun one. I mean,
No, yeah, definitely a fun movie.
yeah.
I gotta say, probably my only two gripes with it. First is we never really hear anything about that letter that the guy wrote. Like, I understand like it was like only this only took over the course of like 2 days, but it wasn't really like a plot point. Like, you never got a scene with like the doctor. It's like, oh, I read the note and I feel terrible or anything like
Yeah.
that. You never got
Well,
that
he
scene.
he gave it to the wall, so I don't know if the wall was going to bring it. And
No,
then
the
he got
wall when the wall got off the boat, he
uh,
like slammed it into the doctor's chest
yeah.
and like walked away from him.
Uh,
Uh, so we never really got to follow up on that plot point. And the other thing is just like, oh my god, I can't even remember the
so the
characters.
two people that handled that note died.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is Lori. She was in one scene where they drank like a Coca Cola together, and then like that's it.
Yeah,
Like
she's like there
she
with
got
them.
saved. There was one scene with a Coke, and that was it. She was not in
Yeah,
any of the final scenes. Nothing.
yeah, she's like there with them, but like kind of like
But she wasn't on the
not.
boat with them. Like
I
it's
guess
almost like they left her back on the
she
station.
was still hurt too,
But
but
like I don't know. I thought it was just a little weird just to like drop her.
yeah, I mean she was still in the med bay at the lab, yeah, and they were kind of I guess trying to steer the Jonas Su Yin
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
relationship thing the whole movie, and even Lori goes, "Oh, she's a nice girl, nice
Well,
lady." She's
because they said Max said like him and Lori were like the worst
yeah,
together. Like it just did not work out. It was
yeah,
like a very mutual like no, we're not.
yeah.
Uh,
So
but yeah,
even
those are like
she,
really my only two gripes with the movie.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if what the cast looks like for
So it
this
looks
sequel. I
like
don't know if she's back
so
in this
so
one.
I did look at it. I didn't notice her on the cast list. It looks like we're getting obviously Jason Statham. We're getting Mac back. DJ looks like he's back, and it looks like we are going to be getting Sunyin and Mei Lee
Okay,
as well. I think that's the original cast. So basically, no Ruby Rose, no
which
Lori, and is there any other? I think those are the only two characters that aren't making a return.
yeah, the Ruby Rose thing is to me is not surprising because she almost uh drowned during the filming of this.
Yeah,
And
she's
she also had issues with Batwoman too with stunts,
yeah.
and she left that. So
She didn't seem to really not be happy with this
yes,
production
she
too
wasn't
much.
vocal about this one,
No,
but
she seemed just very just like she was like the water scenes just took a lot out of her. They were very tiring. There's even footage that they included with it with her saying
yeah,
she's like there's like one scene. I think it was the scene where she was actually swimming back to the boat.
yeah.
She said that scene took like almost a whole day to film, and she's like I don't even remember getting to the end. She's like
Wow.
obviously I made it to the end, but I don't remember. She's like I was so tired they had to lift me out with the crane. She's like I couldn't swim out of the tank. They had to lift me out of the
Jeez.
crane.
Yeah, I'm looking now. I don't see Su Yin's actress, but I do see Mei Ying, and she. I don't know if
Well,
it's
I
the
definitely
same.
saw her in the trailer. I didn't see Su Yin, but I thought I saw on the IMDb
I
page that
see
she
Mei
was there.
Ying, and she is a lot older. I
Well, it's
mean, 5 years.
5 years from when it was released. Who knows when they actually filmed the movie?
And this is besides this in an episode on another TV series. This is the only other thing that she's been in, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
so it was. I think that was Google that
yeah.
was saying
Bing
that.
Bing Lee is the actress for Su Ying.
So on
Yeah,
Google, they
they.
say that she's in it, but on IMDb, it does not.
Yeah, she is not listed.
Okay. So maybe she's not making a return.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. It's gonna be her and Jason Statham.
Yeah, and then I saw this actor Jing Woo
Yes,
heavily featured in the trailer.
yes. He's even got his own poster. I'm wondering if it's gonna transition from Jonas to him, like if it's gonna sort of hand the torch off to him as like the next actor. I am not familiar with him,
Neither am I.
but I'm wondering if it's sort of gonna be like passing the torch over to him, and he's gonna take over for any future sequels if they do more. I would like to see more. This second movie looks absolutely bonkers. I mean,
It
we have
does. My main concern is the. I thought the CG in this one was very good. Like you couldn't tell when they were being,
yeah,
like when they're in the water scenes, it looked seamless. It didn't look like they were in a tank or anything like that at any point. And I don't know. At least maybe just from the trailer, I feel like the Meg looked different. Like it looked. I understand it's
yeah,
supposed to be like the
they're a
biggest
little
Meg.
older. Yeah,
I don't know. It just didn't seem to quite look as good, but it was a trailer, so who knows? Maybe on the final cut, it's going to look a lot better.
yeah,
Those are honestly my two big main concerns because they did have a change in the secondary production company, and they had a change in director for this
yes,
sequel movie. So, I mean, it's not uncommon for there to be not the same
no,
director for all the movies, but you know, to me, it's just a little, call to concern. But I'm ready to watch this movie.
yeah, and even just this original Meg. I mean, this movie was years in the making. Back in the '90s, uh, Disney picked up this movie.
God,
And they had a script in the works, and they got kind of scared off by when Deep Blue, it was Deep Blue Sea, the other shark movie was coming out. They didn't want to compete with it, so the licensing kind of ran out and it reverted back to the author of the books. And then apparently they got frustrated, worked on a script themselves, pitched it, and Guillermo del Toro was attached to it, and he was shopping the script around, and it just didn't happen. And then finally, it got picked up for this 2018 movie. But I mean, this movie, I think back in '96 is when originally Disney was gonna possibly do a movie for this. So it took almost 22 years to get a movie for this thing.
yeah, and it was a good one.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with it. Um, you know, I really don't have a complaint about this movie at all.
Yeah, really
So
enjoyed
that
it.
that gives me a little bit of benefit of doubt on the sequel. I'm hoping they don't completely just go overboard with it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say jump the shark,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I don't know if I'm
yeah.
going to see it in theaters. I don't know if I'm going to
I
have the time, but
I definitely want to try. I
yeah, I definitely
definitely
want
want
to
to try
try.
to see this one in theaters. Uh, it's a week after our trip, so it could be a little tricky. But
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's the problem.
definitely want to try to go see this one in theaters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just gonna be a fun summer blockbuster movie, a real summer blockbuster movie.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think that just about wraps it up for me. Did you have anything
yeah.
else you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we're just gonna keep on with this summer theme going. I'm thinking maybe we'll do Ibra Horror of the Deep for our next review.
Sure.
And we have the Skull Island series. Maybe we'll squeeze that one in. Uh, but yeah, if you guys have any summer movie, monster movie recommendations, give us a shout because we might have a third one to squeeze in there.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, if anything, maybe the Meg 2 will be our third one.
It's definitely possible that the Meg 2 might
But
be our third one.
yeah. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you next episode.
All right, see ya. Bye.